10 bizarre British tractors that shouldn't exist, but do. Tractors are the backbone of farming, built to be tough, practical, and, well, predictable. But what happens when the rules are thrown out the window? Today we're diving into the wild world of British engineering, where creativity and ambition gave birth to some of the strangest machines ever to roll across a farm. From skyscraper-sized tractors to vehicles that looked like they belonged in a science fiction film, we're counting down the 10 most bizarre British tractors that defied expectations, and some, even reality. These machines shouldn't exist, but they do. Why were they built this way? What went wrong? Or right? And how did these mad machines end up changing the way we think about farming machinery? Buckle up, because this isn't your typical farm equipment roundup. Welcome to the world of tractors that broke all the rules. Ranked 10th, Leyland 285 Synchro, the blue box on wheels. When the Leyland 285 Synchro first rolled onto British farmland, most farmers thought they were looking at a prototype, something unfinished, something experimental, something that surely wasn't meant for real-world use. In the 1970s, tractor design was moving towards softer curves, compact frames, and rounded bodywork that blended into the landscape. Leyland, however, went in the opposite direction. They engineered a machine that looked less like a farm tractor and more like a blue shipping container on wheels. The 285 Synchro's shape was unapologetically boxy. Flat panels, vertical walls, sharp corners, and a cab that sat tall and square like a guard tower. From a distance, it often confused people who had never seen one before. Some joked that it looked like a mobile metal wardrobe, while others said it resembled industrial equipment borrowed from a warehouse. But the strangeness wasn't just cosmetic. Leyland positioned the tractor's weight and cab geometry in a way that made it feel different from almost any competitor. Operators reported an unusual sense of lean during turns and heavy pulls, not dangerous, but distinctive enough that you always kept one hand ready on the wheel. Even the engine note had a peculiar resonance inside the square metal cabin. And yet, despite its awkward appearance, the 285 Synchro earned a reputation for remarkable reliability. Its engine was famously tough, the Synchro gearbox was smooth and durable, and its simple mechanical layout made repairs fast and affordable. Many of these machines stayed in service long after sleeker, more modern tractors were retired. That's why the Leyland 285 Synchro begins this countdown. A machine that shouldn't have worked, shouldn't have looked like this, and yet somehow became one of Britain's most memorable oddities. Ranked 9th, David Brown 2D, the two-body tractor that confused everyone. At first glance, the David Brown 2D doesn't look like a tractor at all. It looks like two separate machines fused side by side, an experimental prototype that accidentally escaped from a research lab. Introduced in the late 1950s, the 2D was David Brown's bold attempt to rethink efficiency and visibility. But what they created instead was one of the most visually confusing tractors Britain had ever seen. The tractor's signature oddity was its twin-frame silhouette, two long parallel side panels running the full length of the machine, making it appear as if it had two bodies, or even two engines. In reality, it had only one engine concealed between those panels, but the optical illusion was so strong that many farmers assumed something bigger, more complicated, or more futuristic must be hiding inside. And that illusion wasn't its only quirk. The 2D featured an unusually narrow rear end paired with a long front frame, giving it a strange stance that made people question how stable it could possibly be. Maneuvering one felt different too. The steering geometry created a unique pivoting sensation, as if the tractor were bending in the middle even when it wasn't. For all its bizarre traits, the 2D had undeniable strengths. The offset seating position gave operators excellent forward visibility for orchard work and precision tasks. Its compact profile made it surprisingly nimble in tight rows, and its simple drivetrain proved tough, even if the overall design looked like it came from an alternate universe. What makes the David Brown 2D worthy of the number 9 spot is not failure, but ambition. It was a machine that challenged conventional thinking, strange, experimental, and unforgettable. A tractor that looked wrong, felt unusual, and yet carved its own place in British engineering history. Ranked 8th, Fordson E27N Halftrack, the British tank farm hybrid. Long before modern crawlers and dual-track tractors became mainstream, Britain experimented with something far more dramatic, the Fordson E27N Halftrack. At first sight, it looks like a wartime machine that accidentally wandered into a plowed field. And in many ways, that impression isn't far from the truth. The Halftrack began life as a standard Fordson E27N, simple, rugged, and famously affordable. But when engineers and aftermarket companies started adapting it for extreme terrain, they replaced the rear wheels with a military-style track system, transforming a mild-mannered farm tractor into a miniature tank on the countryside. The result was a machine that could claw through mud, marsh, and slopes that would stop any wheel tractor cold. But the transformation came with oddities. The Halftrack sat higher in the rear, giving it an unusual forward-leaning posture, like it was constantly preparing to charge. Steering felt different too. With tracks biting hard into the ground, the front wheels had to fight for control, resulting in a driving experience that farmers described as half tractor, half creature. The maintenance was even stranger. The track assembly required constant tension adjustments, lubrication, and inspection, far more than everyday farmers were used to. Replacement parts weren't cheap either, and installing the system was closer to rebuilding an armored vehicle than servicing a tractor. And yet, for all its quirks, the Fordson E27N Halftrack earned deep respect. In snowbound regions, peat bogs, hillside farms, and post-war reconstruction work, it could do jobs no ordinary tractor dared attempt. It was bizarre, impractical, brilliant, and ahead of its time all at once. That's why it holds the number 8 spot, a tractor that shouldn't have existed, but proved exactly why it needed to. Ranked 7th, County Super 6, the 6-wheel drive experimental beast. Before articulated tractors and high horsepower crawlers became commonplace, Britain tried something wildly ambitious, a 6-wheel drive tractor built to dominate rough terrain. The result was the County Super 6, a machine that looked like it had rolled straight out of a military engineering project rather than a quiet English farm. At its core, the Super 6 took the proven County 4x4 design and extended it, literally. Engineers added a second powered axle at the rear, creating a tractor with 3 driven axles and 6 massive wheels, all working in unison. This gave the machine phenomenal traction. On muddy hillsides or boggy ground, it could crawl where ordinary tractors sank instantly. Its pulling power made it a legend among those who witnessed it in action. But that extraordinary traction came at a strange price. The Super 6's stretched chassis created a turning radius so wide that maneuvering in tight fields felt almost comical. Operators joked that to turn the machine around, you practically needed the next farm over. Its long body also gave it a visual awkwardness. Too long for comfort, too tall for elegance, and too bulky to ever look normal. And then there was the ride. With 3 axles fighting for grip, the machine sometimes bounced or flexed unpredictably on uneven surfaces, producing a driving sensation unlike anything farmers had experienced. It wasn't unsafe, but it certainly wasn't subtle. Despite its quirks, the County Super 6 was a bold experiment, a tractor that pushed boundaries long before the industry was ready for such ideas. That ambition, mixed with its unmistakably odd appearance, earns it the number 7 position on this list. Ranked 6th, Marshall MP6, the British UFO of the tractor world. When the Marshall MP6 was unveiled, British farmers didn't know what to make of it. Standing in front of the machine felt like staring at something that wasn't meant for agriculture at all, something that looked more at home on a Cold War test range than on a barley field. With its sharp lines, oversized body, and towering stance, the MP6 became one of the strangest tractors ever attempted in Britain. The MP6 was conceived during a time when manufacturers were pushing for bigger horsepower and bolder engineering. But Marshall didn't just push the boundary, they launched straight past it. The tractor's massive bonnet stretched long and high, almost disproportioned to the rest of its frame. Its squared-off cab looked like the cockpit of a military vehicle, giving the machine a commanding but undeniably odd presence. Many joke that the MP6 seemed less like a tractor and more like a British UFO landing on the farm. Operating the P6 was equally unusual. The steering feel was heavy but responsive, and the machine delivered the raw pulling force that Marshall had promised, yet its sheer bulk made it difficult to maneuver on smaller British farms. The size, weight, and fuel demands were too ambitious for the market it was built to serve. Still, for all its impracticality, the MP6 was a statement of intent. It showed what British engineering could do when designers ignored convention and chased vision instead of trend. And although the tractor never became a commercial success, its boldness and its strikingly bizarre appearance has kept it alive in the memories of collectors and machinery fans. That rarity, ambition, and unmistakable weirdness secure its place at number 6 in this countdown. Ranked 5th, Muir-Hill 101, the skyscraper tractor. Long before high-visibility cabs became a buzzword, Muir-Hill decided to solve the problem in the most extreme way possible, by building a tractor so tall that the operator sat higher than the rooflines of some farm buildings. The result was the Muir-Hill 101, a machine that looked less like a tractor and more like a mobile watchtower rolling across the countryside. At the heart of the 101's design was a belief that farmers needed unmatched visibility for heavy towing and industrial work. To achieve that, Muir-Hill lifted the cab far above the engine, stretching the frame and raising the driving position until operators joked they could see tomorrow from up there. The effect was dramatic. Sitting in the 101 felt like piloting a construction crane, commanding, elevated, and slightly intimidating. But that height created quirks no one expected. Climbing into the cab required a tall ladder and a good sense of balance. Crosswinds could nudge the machine just enough to give inexperienced operators a moment of panic. And on narrow British lanes, the towering silhouette often startled drivers who weren't prepared to meet what looked like a tractor on stilts. Yet the 101 wasn't just a spectacle. It had the power and traction needed for forestry, industrial haulage, and heavy farm work. Its Perkins engine delivered steady torque, and the tractor's long chassis provided stability despite its unusual proportions. Farmers who mastered it praised its field presence and pulling strength. Still, there was no getting around its bizarre form. The Muir-Hill 101 looked like a brilliant idea taken several steps too far, a machine that challenged every aesthetic rule of tractor design. That towering audacity is exactly why it earns the number 5 spot on this list. Ranked 4th, County 1474. The Beast, the four-wheel drive, monster that broke the rules. If there is one British tractor that truly looks like it escaped from a military testing ground, it is the County 1474, a machine so massive, so aggressively engineered, and so visually intimidating that farmers quickly gave it a name that stuck for decades, the Beast. County was already famous for turning Ford tractors into powerful four-wheel drive workhorses. But with the 1474, they didn't just build bigger, they built borderline excessive. This tractor featured County's signature double-driven front axle system, a heavy industrial frame, and enormous tires that made the machine stand tall and wide like an armored recovery vehicle. When you saw a 1474 approaching across a field, the first thought wasn't tractor, it was, what is that thing? But the Beast wasn't just about appearance. It delivered torque and traction far beyond what British farms were used to in the 1970s and 80s. This was a machine built for deep plowing, heavy draft work, and demanding landscapes where ordinary tractors ran out of breath. Collectors still say that when a 1474 digs into the soil, you feel the ground vibrate. Yet raw power came with quirks. The tractor's long wheelbase made turning a careful operation, and its sheer mass demanded respect from anyone behind the wheel. On narrow lanes, operators often joked that the Beast took up both sides of the road and half the hedgerow. Fuel consumption was equally legendary, sometimes described as measured in gallons per thought. Still, nothing else in Britain looked or worked like it. The County 1474 was overbuilt, oversized, and unapologetically extreme. Proof that sometimes the most bizarre machines become the most unforgettable. That is why the Beast dominates the number 4 spot. Ranked 3rd, Roadless Plowmaster 75, the tractor that looked wrong, but worked brilliantly. If there is one British tractor that perfectly captures the phrase, "It shouldn't work, but somehow it does," it is the Roadless Plowmaster 75. At first sight, this machine looks almost unfinished, like a prototype that skipped the styling phase and went straight to production. Its blocky nose, angular lines, and unusually upright stance make it resemble a military utility vehicle more than a tractor meant for British farms. The Plowmaster 75 was built during a period when Roadless was determined to prove that four-wheel drive wasn't just a luxury, but a necessity for serious agricultural work. Their solution was bold. Pair a Ford power unit with Roadless's rugged 4x4 system, then wrap it in a body that prioritized function over beauty, sometimes aggressively so. The result was a tractor that looked strange from every angle, but delivered performance few competitors could match. Farmers quickly noticed that, despite its awkward proportions, the Plowmaster 75 had phenomenal traction. In wet clay, hillside fields, or deep furrows, it simply refused to quit. Its long wheelbase and high stance gave it surprising stability, while the 4x4 system allowed it to pull oversized plows with confidence. Operators often described it as ugly but unstoppable. Yet its quirks were real. The angular bonnet limited downward visibility. The elevated chassis made mounting and dismounting a chore. And its appearance drew its fair share of jokes. Some said it looked like a tractor wearing the wrong costume. But in the end, the Plowmaster 75 proved what engineering history often shows. Sometimes the strangest designs are the ones that outperform expectations. That unlikely brilliance secures its place at number 3 in this countdown. Ranked second. Doe Triple-D, the double tractor fused into one giant. Few tractors in the world have a story as bizarre, or as bold, as the Doe Triple-D. At first glance, it looks impossible. Two complete tractors, joined back to back, forming one gigantic articulated machine. It is one of the rare moments in engineering history where creativity, necessity, and audacity collided to produce something truly extraordinary. In the 1950s, horsepower demands on British farms were skyrocketing, but manufacturers couldn't yet deliver a single tractor with the power farmers desperately needed. So Ernest Doe Leyland designed their own solution. They took two Fordson tractors, removed the front axles, and linked them at the chassis with a hydraulic pivot. The result? A tandem drive monster with double the power, double the traction, and double the visual shock factor. Driving the Triple-D was an experience like no other. The center articulation allowed it to bend in the middle, giving surprising agility for something that looked like a mechanical centipede. But its appearance caused endless reactions. People couldn't decide whether to stare, laugh, or salute its bravery. And the performance wasn't a gimmick. The Triple-D became one of the most capable draft tractors of its era, pulling equipment no single tractor could handle. It reshaped expectations for what a farm machine could be. Yet it remained an anomaly, too strange for mass adoption, too unique to forget. Today, the Triple-D is a star at tractor shows, a favorite among collectors, and a symbol of British engineering daring to think beyond the blueprint. That astonishing fusion of practicality and eccentricity secures its place at number 2. In first place, Muir-Hill 121, the high-visibility tower tractor. At the top of this countdown stands one of the most extraordinary tractor designs ever attempted, the Muir-Hill 121, a machine so tall, so commanding, and so unconventional that it looked like a mobile lighthouse crossing a field. The idea behind the 121 was ambitious. Give operators superior visibility for industrial and heavy farm work by raising the cab dramatically above the engine. The result was a tractor with a towering silhouette, long frame, and elevated driving position that made operators feel like they were surveying the entire countryside. From high in the cab, you could see further, steer more confidently, and monitor implements with a clarity no normal height tractor could offer. But that extreme height made the 121 feel almost surreal. Climbing into the cab required a long vertical ladder. Crosswinds nudged the machine in ways that startled newcomers. And its appearance, thin cabin perched atop a stretched chassis, made it look like a futuristic experiment rather than a production tractor. Despite its strange proportions, The 121 was powerful, stable, and highly capable in forestry, construction, and heavy towing. It earned a cult following among operators who appreciated its commanding field presence and unmatched visibility. Still, nothing could overshadow its bizarre architecture. The 121 didn't just bend the rules of tractor design, it ignored them entirely. And that is why it claims the #1 spot. The ultimate British tractor that shouldn't have existed yet became one of the most unforgettable machines ever built. And there you have it, the 10 most bizarre British tractors that defied convention and took farming to a whole new level. Some were ambitious, some were odd, and some were just downright ridiculous. But one thing's for sure, they each played their part in shaping the world of agricultural machinery. Which one shocked you the most? Which design would you want to see in action on your farm? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this ride through the weird and wonderful world of tractors, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode of the most unconventional farming machines. Stay tuned for more mind-blowing machines that redefine what it means to farm. Until next time, keep driving forward and keep questioning the rules. Right.